So it's not the end of the world that you didn't get a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or an RTX 30 series card when they launched, although you might have gotten one by this point. It's not the end of the world, and the reason why we're going to talk about in this video. The fact of the matter is that the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 are the hottest things on the market right now. They probably will be for the next several months, and the things that we really want out of them, those really next-gen exclusives, whatever those may be, those are going to be on the way, but they won't be here for a while, for years to come. So the Series X, the Series S, and the PS5 just launched a few weeks ago. And with that in mind, the launch brought out a lot of scalpers that created bots, basically, that mass bought all of the product that Microsoft and Sony had. For the most part, some people were lucky enough to actually be able to snag one or two. But most of the scalpers out there have a decent supply of PS5s, Xbox Series X's, Series S's, and any other hot product that is going to be on the market. And unfortunately, they have the ability to demand absurd prices for these systems. Normally selling for $500 and marking up the price easily up to like $1,000, sometimes even up to $1,500, or maybe even above that. But the biggest thing for you to remember, you should not cave to scalpers. It's not worth paying $1,500 to a scalper for a system like that, especially whenever we know for a fact that aside from one or two games that maybe Sony has on the PlayStation 5, there isn't really anything on the horizon that is going to demand that you have a Series X or a PS5. And I think that right there is a good reason to be okay with not necessarily having one immediately. Neither system really has a killer application, a killer game that's going to sell it. PlayStation is generally in a better standing here. The situation, they obviously have Spider-Man and they obviously have Demon Souls. That's the game I was thinking of. And those games are definitely going to help sell PS5s, but they're not going to have the mainstream appeal that, say, a Call of Duty would, or that a Destiny would, or that a more mainstream audience oriented game would have, like Call of Duty. It's just they're not going to have that traction. And Microsoft is relying pretty much entirely on its services this time around. They've got 4 generations worth of backwards compatibility, and they've got Game Pass. But a lot of people might argue, a lot of people are arguing, that those programs and those features, do they make up for the fact that Microsoft doesn't really have a big heavy hitter for the Series X, which would have been Halo Infinite, but obviously is delayed for the foreseeable future until we have some sort of substantial update on the progress of the game and when it might be releasing. One of the biggest reasons, I think, that it's not a huge deal that you can't get a PS5 or a Series X, that I can't get one right now, is because most of the games that we're really wanting to play that are going to be optimized for the Series X and the PS5, those games are not going to be out for another 2 to 3, maybe 4 years. We're looking at probably like a 2021 holiday or 2022 release for those games, and potentially going to be delayed even longer because COVID has impacted everything. And you go from an office environment where developers are working in close proximity to one another to being at home remotely, and it just shakes up the entire development process because people who would normally be able to communicate like one-on-one, like within a foot of each other for the last 10 months or so, 8 months, whatever the number is, there's just been remote work from pretty much everyone. And if you're in the Xbox ecosystem, you're going to have Xbox Game Pass, so to an extent, as long as you have an Xbox or a PC or some way to play Game Pass, you'll be able to experience those exclusive games, even if you don't have a Series X or a Series S, to a point. I'm sure that at some point they'll phase out the One X, the One S, and the Xbox One entirely, but that probably won't be until they have a substantial base built up of Xbox Series X's, Series S's, so on and so forth. So to tie this all together, the Series X launched this year, the Series S launched this year, the PS5 launched this year, and there's a pretty high demand for it, and unfortunately, the supply is not going to keep up immediately with that demand. And the biggest thing to take away from that is that it would be great if everyone got a console right now that's new, a Series X or a PS5. It'd be great, but it's not the end of the world if you don't get one immediately, because ultimately, between COVID and between the numerous years that it takes to develop games and actually optimize them for these new systems, it takes time to make those games, and there'll be more than enough time for you to get a console of your choosing to play those games by the time that they get here.